That second feature is The Education of Fredrick Fitzell, a mind-bending mystery starring some of the hottest talent in Hollywood: Dylan O'Brien, Micah Monroe, Emery Cohen, Hannah Gross, and Keir Gilchrist. Teaming up once again with producer Lee Kim, it was a film Chris just had to make.
The Education of Fredrick Fitzell was one of the first screenplays I ever wrote and really loved. I was just sort of really proud of myself for writing it. And I always think every filmmaker, doesn't matter what level of success, has one or two scripts that are sort of the I got to make this before I die script. And that definitely was one of mine. It's a story that, I was told many times, only 1 out of 20 people are going to like this, but that one person's going to absolutely love it, and the other 19 people are going to be confused or put off in some way by it. But it was one of those things. I believed in it. I just believe in the story. I believe that, it's something I'd be proud of after I'm gone. And I just really wanted to make it. And I knew it would be incredibly difficult to finance because it's definitely different and a little bit surreal, a little bit challenging narratively. It's got a different narrative structure. It's not straightforward. I just sort of had to do it. I just figured it was, better to take a shot on something you really love than, an easier shot on something you half love. So that was kind of my thought process there.
Well, it seems like there was a lot of artistic talent that believed in it as well. Incredible cast came together here. How did the package come together? I know Lee Kim, who was a producer on your first feature, Conspiracy, was also a big part of putting this together. What about the rest of the team?
Yeah, so Lee was the producer again on Fitzell, and then we also brought on John Schoenfelder and Russell Ackerman, who are two producers, LA and New York based, that I knew and really liked and wanted to work with. And they used to work with Guillermo del Toro for years, and have now branched off and are doing their own thing. And we knew we wanted to work with each other. And we're just looking for the right project. And I knew that they had, I liked their taste. I knew they were risk takers. So I thought it was the kind of script that they might be into. And I sent it to them and they loved it and sort of came on board. And then their primary and massive contribution to development was that they had really great cast connections. And they're really plugged in LA, and they know everybody, and so they were able to sort of get the script in the hands of actors. And I was surprised for sure that people responded to the script. I thought it still was very hard to finance, but I thought it would be even harder because I thought we'd have a harder time getting cast. But people really responded to the script, and that compared to other experiences I've had trying to cast films, this was actually kind of a painless process. And of course, it all came together mainly because Dylan O'Brien really loved the script, really connected with it, really got it. And, once he came on board, then everything starts to snowball. Once you get one actor that's, considered bankable enough by financiers, then it feels like a real movie to everybody else. And then you start getting other actors, and the more actors you get, the more it snowballs. And next thing you know, you've got a real movie greenlit.
I know there's a lot of mystery built around this script. What can you tell us about Fredrick Fitzell?
Well, it's about Dylan O'Brien's character, Fred Fitzell, who he's just approaching 30. He's kind of got that thing where he's been a grown up for a while, but he's sort of taking those final leaps out of childhood into full blown adulthood. His fiance, he's just moved into a new apartment with her, trying to decide whether he wants to commit to her and get married. He's letting go of his sort of childhood dream of being an artist, and he's taking a quote unquote grown up job in an office. And his mother is on her deathbed as well. So all of these sort of last vestiges of childhood are slipping away from him all at the same time. And right at this moment in his life, he starts getting hit with these surreal and sort of terrifying flashbacks to these drug experiences he had as a teenager. And he then becomes sort of obsessed with understanding these flashbacks to this one night when he was 17 years old. He was on this very powerful drug, which is a fictional drug made up for the film. And he wants to piece together the mystery of what happened this night. So he starts going into his past, both literally and figuratively, trying to figure this out. And he tracks down his whole drug buddies, who've all now, each of them have grown up and become different people, obviously. And they start piecing together just the mystery of what happened, what this drug was, what it did to them, and what are these sort of things they've forgotten about what happened this night. And there's a mystery of a girl that went missing, played by Micah Monroe. And yeah, and it's a surreal, sometimes scary, hopefully sometimes touching mystery.
And you shot back here in Toronto, same location as your first feature. Is the education of Fredrick Fitzell set in Toronto?
Yeah, it's set in Toronto. We don't advertise that it's Toronto. It's never actually stated out loud that it's Toronto, but I also don't hide that it's Toronto. I think I like to think of it as the Dead Ringers approach. In Cronenberg's Dead Ringers, he's not like driving by the CN Tower every shot, but at the same time, it's not at all hidden that it's they're using Canadian money or that it's set in a Canadian city, and that's sort of the approach we took. I think movies set in New York and LA and Chicago and things like, they don't have to advertise where they are. They just are there. And I think, and they definitely don't hide it, obviously. And I think that's always the smartest approach with Toronto is, the movie, to me, the movie that's the best way to handle narratively being shot in Toronto is Villeneuve's Enemy is like, I don't think Toronto's ever looked so creepy or like beautifully dark than in that movie. And like, they don't go out of their way to try to make it like this is a Canadian film, rah rah rah, or anything. It's just a creepy psychological thriller that happens to be set in Toronto, and they just utilize the things about Toronto that are creepy and make it a little bit creepier. And anyway, so that's what we tried to do.
So by Hollywood standards, the film's was produced for a modest budget, but certainly a step up from The Conspiracy. Going from The Conspiracy to a larger budget with Fitzell, was there a big difference for you, or was it much of the same?
I didn't really sense that much of a big difference. I mean, obviously there was. I think the budget of Fitzell was like 7 times what the budget of The Conspiracy was, but I always felt like I did not have enough money. I felt exactly like The Conspiracy. Like, and I'm sure if I had, 10 times the budget, it would have felt the same. I think, I've talked to people who've directed, huge movies for, millions, tens of millions of dollars and stuff. And it's always the same. You rarely ever hear a story about anyone who made a movie and had too much money. Like you never have enough time. You never have, the tools. You're always having to improvise. So yeah, it didn't really feel different to me at all, in that sense. But having a more recognized cast felt different at first. I remember at the end of the first week of shooting. For the first week, we had just 2 of the leads, and then there was a day towards the end of that first week when all the cast happened to be on set at once, getting their like costume tests done and stuff like that. And so they weren't all shooting until the next week. But I went downstairs to say hello, and there was just this moment where like everybody was there. So the whole cast of Dylan O'Brien and Hannah Gross, Emery Cohen, Micah Monroe. I think Keir Gilchrist was the only one that wasn't there. But I had this moment standing around talking to all of them that felt very surreal, and was sort of a like, wow, like it's amazing, these characters that I dreamed up in this strange little story I never thought anyone would like, and now I have such cool, good actors that are like come to life right in front of me, and they're all here and it's real, and I just remember that moment. But you realize super quick that it doesn't matter how recognized you are, how famous you are, how whatever. Like actors are actors, and the process is the same. And you just it's not overwhelming for longer than 5 minutes, really. And the stress and the enormity of the job at hand, trumps all of that really quickly.
Was did you have to take more care on sets and things like that just because of some of the increased celebrity elements of actors like Dylan?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Dylan in particular. I mean, he's got a lot of obsessed Dylanites. That show he was on for a million years called Teen Wolf has a much bigger following than I realized, and obviously like his other work in the Maze Runner movies and stuff. But yeah, the first weekend Dylan came to Toronto, and we were hanging out and working on the script and stuff. We went out, foolishly, I guess, to this like outside patio in Toronto, to just have some food and talk about the script and stuff. And a literal lineup of people started to form at our table, of people waiting to take a picture with Dylan and wanting to talk to him. And it got ridiculous. We just couldn't stay there. And people were videotaping us having our meeting, and it got put online. Like here's Dylan O'Brien having dinner with some unknown weirdo in Toronto. And then later that night I realized quickly, like, man, Dylan's got a lot of fans. He's very recognizable. I can't just take him to like a public place. And then we found this perfect private little spot that was literally empty, but was really nice. And so we hung out there the whole night. But again, stupidly, we left that place it was a Saturday night at like 1 a.m. when we left. And we walked through, along King Street to get him back to his Airbnb. I walked him home, and we walked right through all of the sort of like King Street, lounges and clubs that were getting out. And it just became chaos. Like people started recognizing, people were just screaming, Dylan O'Brien, just screaming his name. And people started to follow us, like big groups started to follow us and scream at us. And, Dylan's got his hood up. We're trying to walk quickly. And it was crazy. It was like, something out of Hard Day's Night, but like, but not fun. Not like, there was nothing about it that was like, like, when you're around famous people, you get a little taste of what it's like to be them for a couple minutes. But like nothing about it was cool. It was just scary, and it was just like, man, this actually must really suck. Because all these drunk, morons that are just like screaming at him and stuff. And so yeah, we like had to really rush through these people and get back to his Airbnb. But I learned my lesson that you can't expect famous people to just like hang out in all the normal places you do. And yeah, when we were on set, there'd be times like on social media, it would leak out that Dylan was shooting somewhere, and we'd have huge groups of like mainly, young girls that were like, had signs and were like outside the set and, waving and stuff. We had a guy who came from Brazil, to meet Dylan, and somehow found out where he was shooting, and like hung out for like 2 days, outside our set with a sign that said like, Dylan, I'm your soulmate. When he arrived in Toronto, from LA to come here to start shooting, there were people from Japan that met him at the airport that somehow figured out when he was coming to Toronto, what his flight was, and, tried to, I don't know what they tried to do, but they were there to meet him. At our production office, we got fan mail from Russia for him, that somehow people from Russia got the address of our, little production office in Toronto. It was crazy. So, it was, that was definitely an interesting experience, just to sort of see what it's like for, people like Dylan. And, you can only imagine, how much worse it can get, the more famous you get. But, yeah, it was definitely strange.
All because you wanted to collaborate and workshop the script a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, we yeah, we had a lot of work to do. And, Yeah, it
Is that
was.
something that you, how important was that process pre-shooting to be able to sit down and talk about character and then, clearly, if you're going over the script, that flexibility that you as both a director and a screenwriter have to have, when you're collaborating with other artists?
Yeah, I mean, it's very important. Like, I think every actor is different, and every actor has their own like secret language, and every actor has their own way they want to be directed. And some directors, I think, they just have their way. This is how I direct. If you're coming on my movie, you need to sync up with me and work the way I work. But that's just not the way I am with directing. I try to figure out what every actor's secret language is and what how every actor wants to be directed. And some people want to talk things through like crazy. Like Emery Cohen is that kind of actor. He would love Skyping. We Skyped so much before we started shooting, just talking about his character, and he likes to daydream. He likes to bounce ideas off his director. He likes to talk. He likes to try things. Whereas other actors are like, I got this. I know exactly who this person is. The more you talk to me, you're just screwing me up. Like they really want to take care of it themselves, and you have to sort of figure that out quickly. And while at the same time keeping an eye on them that they really do know what they're doing, and if not, figure out how to gently prod them in the right way. But yeah, they're all different. Like they all. Some people, some I've worked with actors who really need to be angry and really need to like yell at people and need to like that's part of their process. It's how they get worked up. It's just to like to lose it a little bit. It gets their juices flowing. And then some people like Dylan. Dylan's process seems to be that he stays very very casual. He jokes. He's like he's having a great time. And at first it seems like, oh, he's not taking this seriously. But I realized, working with him, that that's his process. Like he has to keep very loose and has to joke around and has to tell jokes and has to laugh. And then the second you call action, he doesn't miss a beat. He's crying instantly, and it's real. And then you call cut, and he's back to making jokes. But I don't think he could get there. He couldn't start crying. He couldn't go the places he goes if he didn't have his process, which was that he has to keep it very light before and after action is called. So yeah, it's different for every actor, and it's some people want to work with you a lot. Some people want to do their own thing, and you just got to figure that out as quick as you can.
And you're in post-production right now?
We just finished, actually. I just did a bit of a marathon, 42 hours without sleep, and we just finished the film and just delivered it. So yeah, hopefully it's not too much longer till it finds a home in the world. It was interesting finishing it during the pandemic because we were, we were about, I'd say, like a week and a half we had left of editing, of cutting, and then the whole world just shut down. So we had to stop and start editing remotely, which obviously made everything longer. It took, so much longer when you're working that way. It's not ideal, but we got through it. But then the even more difficult thing was mixing remotely. That was hell. It was when you're in a mix, when you're, which if anyone doesn't know, it's working out all your sound levels, and so you're usually in a big production facility. You're looking at a movie theater size screen. You've got 2 or 3 or 4 sound mixers with you in a room, and you're just talking it through. Like, this should be louder. No, not that sound. This sound. That little sound there needs to fade out here, and you're just talking through every little sound. You're rewinding, going back, rewinding, going back, rewinding, going back, perfecting every second of sound. And then when you're trying to do that remotely from home with a Word document, you're trying to explain these things in a Word document you're typing up and sending to them. It's really really challenging. So that extended how long it took us to finish as well. But this is the state of the world right now. It's I'm far from the only person having to deal with this. And then there's the question of where this is a film that we had thought would go into film festivals right after finishing, but there are no film festivals right now, and nobody knows when there ever will be. So what do you do when you have a film that's made for a film festival that suddenly is being birthed into a world that there are no film festivals? It's going to be we're a bit of canary in the coal mine for the industry, I think, to see how all films like our film that are just finishing as this pandemic's hitting, to see what happens. Like, do we just virtually go to buyers directly? Do we skip the filmmaking or the film festival process entirely? Do we skip the theatrical window entirely? Do we just go right to Netflix? I know a lot of people are doing that anyway, but like, it's our hand completely forced now. We have to do that. I don't have the answer to any of these questions, but these are all things we're going to have to figure out. Where this film finds a home.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, this movie is going to find a very dedicated and passionate fan base, and I will be among them. I can't wait to see it. You know why?
Because
I love your work.
ah, thank you, sir.
You see what I did there?
I see what you did there. You set it up and then you brought it full circle. Yeah, and that's the title of, yeah, got it.